She sent her last $100 to the wrong number, and the stranger who received it sent back $10,000. But money wasn't what either of them needed. Hello, family. Before we begin, I have a small but heartfelt request. Please subscribe. Your support is what keeps these stories alive. Every time you click that button, you're helping us share voices that would otherwise be forgotten and stories that deserve to be heard. Let us know in the comments where you're watching from and how this story touched you. The rain fell like penance over Ashmont. It came in relentless sheets, drumming against the warped window panes of the Southbank district, where the streetlights flickered and the sidewalks split open like old wounds. The city had a way of swallowing hope, grinding it down beneath cracked concrete and rusted fire escapes, until all that remained was the dull ache of endurance. This was not a place where dreams were born. It was a place where they came to die quietly, unnoticed, beneath the weight of unpaid bills and empty refrigerators. In a third-floor apartment of a building that had long since given up pretending to be livable, Solène Cassera sat on the edge of a sagging couch, her body folded in on itself like a question no one had bothered to answer. The single lamp in the corner cast a pool of amber light across the room, illuminating the places where the wallpaper had peeled away to reveal the gray plaster beneath. The air was thick with the smell of damp wood and mildew, undercut by the faint, sweet ghost of baby lotion. Outside, the storm pressed against the glass, each droplet a small, insistent reminder that the world did not care. Inside, the silence was not absolute. It was punctured by the soft, restless whimper of Remy, Solène's 3-year-old daughter, stirring in the portable crib wedged into the corner near the kitchenette. The sound was small, fragile, but it cut through the quiet like a blade. Solène's hands rested on her knees, fingers tracing the frayed hem of her sweater, a nervous, unconscious motion, as if she were searching for some thread to hold onto in the unraveling fabric of her life. She was 31, though the exhaustion carved into her face made her look older. Her deep brown skin, once radiant, now carried the dullness of too many sleepless nights and too few meals. Her hair, dark and thick with curls that had once been her pride, was pulled back into a lopsided bun, a few rebellious strands falling across her forehead. She had stopped looking in mirrors weeks ago. She knew what she'd see: a stranger, a woman she didn't recognize. The kitchen counter was a study in scarcity. A half-empty jar of off-brand peanut butter, a sleeve of crackers, a tin of generic formula, its lid pried open and scraped clean hours before. Solène had mixed the last of it with more water than the instructions recommended, stretching it just enough to get Remy through the night. The guilt had sat heavy in her chest as she'd watched her daughter drink it down, tiny hands clutching the bottle, eyes half closed in weary contentment. "It's enough, baby," she had whispered into the dark. It's enough. But it wasn't enough. It had never been enough. On the coffee table, her phone lay face up, its screen spiderwebbed with cracks that caught the lamplight and refracted it into a dozen fractured stars. The background was a photo from 2 years ago. Solène in a cap and gown, Remy as an infant bundled in her arms, both of them smiling. It felt like looking at someone else's life. Someone who still believed the degree in biochemistry, gathering dust in a drawer, would mean something. Someone who hadn't yet learned that the world didn't care how hard you'd worked if you couldn't afford childcare, couldn't afford to finish, couldn't afford to be. Solène reached for the phone, her hand trembling slightly. The screen lit up, displaying a notification she'd been staring at for the past hour. Final notice: rent payment overdue. Eviction proceedings will begin in 72 hours. 72 hours. 3 days to find $850 she didn't have. 3 days before she and Remy were on the street. She opened her banking app with the practiced motion of someone who checked it compulsively, desperately, as if the numbers might magically change. They never did. Account balance: $107.52. $107. That was all that stood between her and the edge. She'd been rationing it like a shipwreck survivor rationing fresh water, parceling it out in agonizing increments. $3 for a carton of eggs, $5 for bread, $12 for the cheapest formula she could find. Every transaction felt like tearing off a piece of herself. Remy whimpered again, louder this time, and Solène's chest constricted. She rose from the couch, her joints stiff from hours of sitting in the same position, and crossed to the crib. Remy was on her back, her small face scrunched in displeasure, one tiny fist pressed against her mouth. Even in sleep, she was hungry. "Shush, sweet girl," Solène murmured, reaching down to stroke Remy's forehead. Her daughter's skin was warm, slightly damp with the humidity of the poorly ventilated room. "Mama's here. Mama's got you." The lie tasted like ash. Solène returned to the couch and picked up her phone again. She scrolled through her contacts until she found the name she was looking for. Cass. Her cousin. The only family member who still answered her calls, though even that felt tenuous now, like a rope fraying strand by strand. She opened their message thread. The last exchange had been 3 weeks ago. "Cass, you okay?" "Solène, yeah. Managing." Another lie. She seemed to be made of them now. Her thumb hovered over the keyboard. She typed slowly, each word a small humiliation. "Solène, hey. I know I haven't paid you back from last time yet, but I'm in a really bad spot. Can I send you $100 for groceries? I'll pay you back next month. I promise." She read it over. "Deleted, I promise." It felt too desperate. Added it back. Deleted it again. Finally, she just hit send before she could overthink it further. Cass replied within seconds. "Cass, of course. Send it over. You don't have to pay me back. Just take care of you and Remy." Solène's eyes stung. She blinked hard, refusing to let the tears fall. Gratitude and shame were twin flames in her chest, burning equally bright. She opened her payment app, one of those peer-to-peer services everyone used now, with the bright, cheerful interface that promised simplicity and connection. She navigated to Cass's profile. The familiar photo loaded. Cass grinning at a family barbecue, a smear of sauce on her cheek, joy radiating from every pixel. Solène typed in the amount. $100. Attached a message. "Thank you, Cass. I'll pay you back. I promise." Her finger hovered over the send button. This was it. This was the last of her money. After this, there would be $7.52 left. $7.52 to last until... What? Until some miracle fell from the sky? Until the world decided to notice her? She closed her eyes and pressed send. The phone vibrated in her hand. The confirmation screen loaded. $100 sent successfully. She let out a breath she didn't realize she'd been holding. It was done. At least Remy would eat tomorrow. At least. Her eyes caught on something. The recipient name beneath the confirmation. Sent to T. Voss. Her stomach dropped. "No," she whispered. "No, no, no." She tapped frantically, pulling up the transaction details. The number. The account. It was wrong. She'd sent it to the wrong person. 1 digit off. One mistyped number in her exhaustion, her shaking hands, her blurred vision. And now it was gone. $100. Gone. Solène stared at the screen, her breath coming in short, shallow gasps. The room tilted. She refreshed the app. Refreshed it again. The transaction was complete. Irreversible. Account balance. $7.52. A sound escaped her throat, something between a sob and a laugh, bitter and broken. She pressed her palm against her mouth, trying to hold it in, trying to keep the scream from waking Remy. Her body shook. She doubled over, the phone clattering to the floor. This was it. This was how it ended. Not with some dramatic collapse, but with a single typo. A mistake. One wrong number, and everything she'd been clinging to, every shred of dignity, every whispered promise to her daughter that they'd be okay. It all dissolved like sugar in rain. She didn't know how long she sat there, rocking slightly, arms wrapped around herself. Time felt slippery, unmoored. Eventually, Remy began to cry in earnest, a full-throated wail that cut through the fog of Solène's despair. She moved on autopilot, lifting her daughter from the crib, holding her close. Remy's small body was warm and solid against her chest, her sticky hands tangling in Solène's hair. "Mama," Remy whimpered, the words soft and sleepy and full of trust. Solène pressed her lips to her daughter's forehead. "I'm here, baby. I'm here." But as she rocked Remy back to sleep, whispering reassurances she didn't believe, Solène's gaze drifted to the phone on the floor. The cracked screen glowed faintly in the dim light, a notification icon blinking in the corner. She should pick it up. Check if there was a way to reverse the transaction. Contact the stranger. Beg them to send it back. But she couldn't move. Couldn't face it. Not yet. Outside, the rain continued to fall, and the city of Ashmont pressed on, indifferent to the small, quiet catastrophe unfolding in a third-floor apartment where a woman and her daughter clung to each other in the dark. 42 floors above the city, the storm was a distant murmur. Crystal Tower stood like a monument to ambition, its glass and steel facade reflecting the fractured lights of Ashmont below. From the penthouse on the top floor, the city looked almost beautiful, a sprawling grid of amber and white, veins of light pulsing through the dark. Almost beautiful, but not quite. There was something cold about the view, something sterile. A painting behind glass. Untouchable. Tiernan Voss stood at the floor-to-ceiling window, one hand in the pocket of his tailored slacks, the other holding a phone to his ear. His voice was calm, measured, edged with the kind of authority that came from years of being the smartest person in the room. I don't care what the board thinks, Marlowe. If they want to stall on the Helix acquisition, they can find another CEO. His tone was ice. We move forward. End of discussion. The voice on the other end, his assistant, Marlowe, sharp and efficient, murmured something placating. Tiernan's jaw tightened. Fine. Schedule the call for tomorrow. 8 a.m. And Marlowe, he paused. Tell them if they waste my time again, I'll replace the entire board by Friday. He ended the call without waiting for a response, and set the phone down on the desk behind him. The motion was precise, controlled. Everything about Tiernan Voss was controlled. He was 43, though he carried his age with the kind of effortless discipline that came from personal trainers, private chefs, and a life lived in relentless forward motion. His dark hair was clipped short, streaked with silver at the temples, a detail that made him look distinguished rather than old. His face was angular, handsome in a remote sculptural way, with sharp cheekbones and a mouth that rarely smiled. His eyes, pale gray and startlingly cold, were the kind that missed nothing. He wore a white dress shirt, sleeves rolled to the elbows, the top button undone. Even at rest, he looked like a man preparing for battle. The penthouse around him was a study in minimalism. White walls, black furniture, chrome fixtures. Everything clean, angular, expensive. There were no photographs on the walls, no personal effects cluttering the surfaces. It was a space designed for function, not comfort. A place to sleep, to work, to exist, but not to live. On the desk, half hidden beneath a stack of quarterly reports, was a single framed photograph. Tiernan's gaze flicked toward it, then away. He reached over and flipped it face down without looking at it. The motion was automatic, a ritual performed so often it had become reflex. He poured himself 2 fingers of scotch from the crystal decanter on the bar cart, then stood there, glass in hand, staring at the amber liquid. He didn't drink it. He never did. He just held it, feeling the weight of the glass, the faint warmth of the alcohol seeping through the crystal. The silence in the penthouse was absolute. No hum of traffic. No voices. Just the faint whisper of the climate control system and the distant patter of rain against the windows. It was the kind of silence that should have been peaceful. Instead, it felt suffocating. Tiernan set the glass down, untouched, and returned to the window. Below, Ashmont sprawled in all its broken, beating glory. Somewhere down there, people were living, laughing, fighting, loving. He wondered, distantly, what that felt like. His phone buzzed. He glanced at it, expecting another message from Marlowe or an alert from one of his monitored portfolios. Instead, it was a notification from a payment app he barely remembered installing. $100 received from Solène K. He frowned. Opened the app. There was a message attached. Thank you, Cass. I'll pay you back. I promise. S. Tiernan stared at the screen. Wrong number. An obvious mistake. The amount was small, laughably small by his standards. $100. He spent more than that on a single lunch without thinking. He should refund it. One tap, and it would be over. A minor inconvenience corrected. But something about the message stopped him. I'll pay you back. I promise. There was desperation in those words. A plea wrapped in politeness. He could feel it. The weight of what that $100 meant to someone. Not pocket change. Not an afterthought. Everything. He navigated to the sender's profile. Solène K. No profile picture. No bio. Just a name and a blank circle where a face should be. He tapped on the transaction history, and the app previewed her account balance in a glitch of interface design. $7.52. Tiernan stared at the number. $7.52. For a moment he couldn't breathe. He saw himself at 12 years old, standing in a corner store with a stolen loaf of bread tucked under his jacket. He saw his mother's hands, raw and red from scrubbing floors, counting coins on a kitchen table. He saw Idris, 10 years old, grinning through a split lip, saying, "We're going to be fine, Tier. You'll see." He closed the app, opened it again, stared at the name. Solène K. He didn't know her, would never meet her. She was a stranger, a ghost in the machine, wrong number in a city of 800,000 people. But that number, $7.52, it wouldn't leave him. Before he could talk himself out of it, Tiernan opened the payment screen. His fingers moved quickly, decisively, typing an amount that felt absurd and inadequate all at once. $10,000. No message. What could he possibly say? He hit send. The confirmation screen loaded. The money was gone. Irreversible. Tiernan set the phone down and exhaled slowly. His hands were steady, but something in his chest felt loose, unmoored. He returned to the window, staring out at the city below. Somewhere out there, a stranger had just received $10,000 from a man she'd never met. He didn't know what she'd do with it. Didn't know if it would help or hurt or simply confuse her. He only knew that for the first time in years, he'd done something that wasn't calculated. Something that wasn't strategic. Something human. The rain fell and the city breathed, and in a penthouse 42 floors above the world, Tiernan Voss stood alone, wondering if he'd just made the best mistake of his life, or the worst. Back in the Southbank apartment, Solène's phone buzzed. She ignored it at first. She was still rocking Remy, still whispering soft, broken reassurances into her daughter's hair. But the phone buzzed again. Insistent. With a shaking hand, she reached for it. The screen lit up. $10,000 received from T. Voss. Solène's breath caught. Her vision blurred. She blinked, certain she was hallucinating. But the number stayed. $10,000. From the stranger she'd accidentally sent money to. Her hands went numb. The phone slipped from her grip, landing softly on the couch cushion beside her. She stared at it, heart hammering, mind reeling. What the hell just happened? Have you ever made a mistake that changed your life? Drop a comment below. I'd love to hear your story. Share with us in the comments below. For 3 full minutes, Solène didn't move. She sat frozen on the couch, Remy a warm weight against her chest, her daughter's breathing soft and even now, lulled back into sleep. But Solène's own breath came in shallow, uneven gasps. Her eyes remained locked on the phone screen, on the number that glowed there like some impossible star. $10,000. It had to be a mistake, a glitch, some algorithmic error in the system that would correct itself by morning, vanishing as quickly as it had appeared, leaving her with nothing but the hollow ache of false hope. She reached for the phone with trembling fingers, half expecting it to dissolve like smoke the moment she touched it. But the screen was solid, real, cool beneath her palm. She tapped the notification, and the payment app opened, displaying the transaction in clinical detail. From T. Voss. Amount, $10,000. Status, complete. Message, none. No message. No explanation. Just $10,000 dropped into her account like rain from a clear sky. Solène's thumb moved instinctively to the sender's profile. She tapped it. A blank avatar stared back. Just the default gray silhouette the app generated when users didn't upload photos. The name T. Voss offered nothing. No location. No bio. No clues. Her mind raced through possibilities, each more unsettling than the last. Was this some kind of scam? A way to access her account? Would they demand it back with interest, with threats? Or was it a test, some cruel social experiment, a trap waiting to spring shut the moment she touched the money? But beneath the fear, something else stirred. Something dangerous. Hope. She navigated to her account balance, her heart a drum against her ribs. $10,007.52. $10,007. Enough to pay rent for a year. Enough to buy real food, formula that wasn't watered down, winter clothes for Remy. Enough to breathe. Solène closed her eyes, pressing Remy closer, feeling the steady thump of her daughter's heartbeat against her own. A sob built in her throat, but she swallowed it down. She couldn't afford to fall apart. Not yet. Not until she understood what this was. She opened her eyes and began to type, her fingers clumsy on the cracked screen. Solène, I think there's been a mistake. I sent you $100 by accident. You didn't have to. She stopped, deleted it, started again. Solène, I don't know who you are, but I can't accept this. Too proud. She deleted that too. Finally, she settled on something simple. Solène, did you mean to send this? She hit send before she could second-guess herself. The message showed as delivered. Then, after a moment, as read. She waited, barely breathing. 1 minute passed. Then 2. The typing indicator appeared, disappeared, appeared again. Finally, a response. Voss, yes. That was all. 1 word. No elaboration. No context. Solène stared at the screen, frustration rising to replace the shock. She typed quickly. Solène, why? This time, the response came faster. Voss, because you needed it. Something in her chest twisted. Anger and gratitude tangled so tightly she couldn't tell them apart. Her fingers flew across the keyboard. Solène, you don't know me. You don't know what I need. A pause. Then, Voss, I know what $7.52 means. Solene's breath hitched. He'd seen her balance. The app must have shown it somehow, some privacy flaw in the interface. He'd seen exactly how broke she was, how desperate. The humiliation burned through her like acid. Solène, so what, you felt sorry for me? I'm not your charity case. Voss, I didn't say you were. Solène, then what is this? The typing indicator appeared and lingered for a long time. Solène watched it, her pulse hammering in her temples. Finally, Voss, a correction. Solène, for what? Voss, for every time someone looked the other way. The words landed in her chest like stones. She read them again, trying to find the angle, the manipulation, the catch. But there was something raw in that sentence, something that didn't sound like pity. It sounded like recognition. She didn't know what to say. Her thumb hovered over the keyboard, a dozen responses forming and dissolving. Before she could settle on one, another message appeared. Voss, you don't have to thank me. You don't have to talk to me. But don't send it back. Use it. Solène, I don't take handouts. Voss, it's not a handout. It's a mistake I'm choosing not to correct. Just like you made a mistake sending me $100. We're even. Solène almost laughed, a bitter, disbelieving sound that caught in her throat. We're even. As if $100 and $10,000 were remotely comparable. As if his world and hers existed on the same plane. But she didn't argue. She was too tired, too overwhelmed. Instead, she typed, Solène, I don't understand you. Voss, you don't have to. And that was where he left it. No further messages. The conversation simply ended. Solène sat in the dim apartment, Remy asleep against her, and stared at the phone until her vision blurred. Outside, the rain had softened to a drizzle, the storm finally spent. The room felt different now, not warmer exactly, but less suffocating, as if a window had opened somewhere she couldn't see. She looked at the balance again. $10,007.52. It was real. It was there. And despite every instinct screaming at her to send it back, to refuse it, to protect her pride, she knew she wouldn't. Because Remy was asleep in her arms, and tomorrow she would wake up hungry, and Solène's pride had never filled her daughter's belly. In the penthouse, Tiernan set his phone down and walked back to the window. The exchange had unsettled him more than he wanted to admit. He'd expected gratitude, maybe. Or anger. What he hadn't expected was her resistance. Her refusal to simply take what he'd offered. Most people would have said thank you and disappeared. But not her. I'm not your charity case. He could still feel the sting of those words, the accusation beneath them. And she was right, in a way. He didn't know her. Didn't know her story, her life, the weight she carried. He'd made an assumption based on a number, $7.52, and acted on impulse. But it wasn't pity that had made him send the money. It was the ghost of a boy standing in a corner store with stolen bread under his jacket. It was his mother's raw hands and his brother's split-lip grin. It was every time someone had looked at them and looked away, deciding their suffering wasn't worth the inconvenience of care. Tiernan picked up the photo on his desk, the one he'd flipped face down earlier. He turned it over slowly. Idris stared back at him, 17 and invincible, caught mid-laugh at some joke Tiernan couldn't remember anymore. The photo had been taken 3 weeks before the accident. 3 weeks before Tiernan's world had fractured into before and after. "I don't know what I'm doing," he said quietly to the image. "But I think you'd understand." Idris didn't answer. He never did. Tiernan set the photo back down, face up this time, and returned to the window. Somewhere out there in the Southbank, a woman named Solène was making a choice. He'd given her the means. What she did with it was beyond his control. And for once, that didn't bother him. For once, the silence in the penthouse felt less like a tomb and more like a held breath. Waiting. The next morning, Solène stood in the cereal aisle of a corner grocery store, Remy perched on her hip. The fluorescent lights buzzed overhead, harsh and unforgiving. The store smelled like disinfectant and old produce. Solène held a canister of name-brand formula in her hand. The good kind, the kind she'd only ever looked at before, and tried to convince herself it was okay to put it in her cart. Remy tugged at her hair. "Mama, hungry." "I know, baby. We're getting food." She placed the formula in the cart, then added fresh strawberries, a bunch of bananas, real milk, chicken breast, vegetables that weren't canned. Each item felt like a small rebellion, a tiny declaration. "I exist. My daughter exists. We deserve to eat." At the register, she handed over her debit card with shaking hands. The total flashed on the screen, $87.32. A week ago, that would have been impossible. Now it was barely a dent. The transaction went through. The cashier handed her the receipt without looking up. Solène walked out into the gray morning light, Remy babbling happily, bags heavy in her arms. And for the first time in months, she felt something that wasn't despair. She felt possible. For 3 days, Solène didn't touch the rest of the money. She'd bought groceries, real groceries, the kind that didn't come in dented cans or require coupons she didn't have. She'd paid her rent, watching the landlord's expression shift from hostility to surprise when she handed him a money order for the full amount. She'd even bought Remy a new pair of shoes, the kind that fit properly instead of pinching her toes. Small, necessary things. Survival things. But the remaining balance sat in her account like a stone in her stomach. $9,000. Untouched. Accusing. Every time she opened her phone, she saw it. Every time she closed her eyes, she felt the weight of it. This impossible gift from a stranger who'd seen her at her lowest and decided to intervene. The shame of it was a living thing, coiled tight in her chest. She'd spent her whole life trying to be invisible, to not be a burden, to prove she could handle things on her own. And in one night, one typo, one transaction, all of that had been stripped away. Someone had seen her, really seen her, and she didn't know if she could forgive him for it. She hadn't messaged Tiernan Voss again, hadn't thanked him, hadn't asked the 1,000 questions burning in her mind. Because what could she possibly say? "Thank you for exposing how completely I've failed. Thank you for reminding me I can't do this alone." The words felt like ash in her throat. Instead, she carried Remy through their days in the Southbank, moving through the rhythms of survival with a new, uncomfortable ease. The formula tin on the counter was full. The refrigerator hummed with actual food. Remy's laughter came more easily now, bright and unrestrained, and Solène tried to let that be enough. But at night, alone on the couch after Remy had fallen asleep, she would pick up her phone and stare at the message thread. At his last words, "Tiernan Voss, you don't have to understand. Just use it." She'd typed and deleted a dozen responses. "Who are you? Why did you really do this? What do you want from me?" But she never sent any of them, because she was afraid of the answers. Afraid that he'd say it was pity after all. Or worse, that he'd say it was nothing, That $10,000 meant so little to him that helping her had been as thoughtless as dropping change in a street musician's case. She didn't know which would hurt more. On the fourth day, her phone buzzed with a new message. Solène was folding laundry, Remy's tiny shirts, her own worn jeans, when she saw the notification. Her hands stilled. Voss, did it help? 3 words. Simple, direct, and somehow they cracked something open inside her. She sat down hard on the couch, the unfolded laundry forgotten. Her fingers hovered over the keyboard. She could ignore him, delete the message, pretend this had never happened and go back to her life, such as it was. But Remy toddled over, clutching her new stuffed rabbit, another small purchase Solène had allowed herself, and climbed into her lap. Mama phone. Solène kissed the top of her daughter's head, breathing in the clean scent of the baby shampoo she'd been able to afford. Real shampoo, not the watered-down generic. And she realized she couldn't pretend, because it had helped. It had saved them. She typed slowly. Solène, yes. She hit send before she could overthink it. Then, after a pause, added, Solène, but I still don't understand why you did it. The response came quickly. Voss, does it matter? Solène, yes. Because nobody does something like that for nothing. There's always a reason. Always something they want. A longer pause this time. She watched the typing indicator appear and disappear twice before his message finally came through. Voss, you're right. I did want something. Solène's stomach dropped. There it was. The catch. She should have known. She typed with shaking fingers. Solène, what? Voss, to know that it made a difference. That's all. She stared at the words, searching for the lie, the manipulation. But all she found was simplicity. A statement so plain it almost hurt. Solène, why do you care if it made a difference to me? You don't know me. Voss, maybe that's exactly why. Solène, that doesn't make sense. Voss, no. I suppose it doesn't. Solène set the phone down, frustration rising like bile. He was infuriating, answering without answering, revealing nothing while somehow making her feel exposed. She picked the phone back up. Solène, are you rich? Is that why $10,000 is nothing to you? A pause. Voss, yes. At least he was honest. She laughed, a short, bitter sound. Solène, must be nice. Playing God with people's lives because you can afford to. She regretted it the moment she sent it. It was cruel, unfair. But she was so tired of being grateful, of feeling small, of owing something to someone she'd never met. His response took longer this time. Voss, I'm not playing God. I'm just someone who made a choice. You can hate me for it if you want. But your daughter has food now. So hate me with a full stomach. The words hit like a slap. Solène felt tears sting her eyes. Tears of rage and shame and something else she couldn't name. Solène, I don't hate you. I just don't know what you want from me. Voss, nothing. I don't want anything from you. Solène, then why are you still messaging me? Another long pause. When his response came, it was different. Quieter. Voss, I don't know. For the first time, Solène felt the ground shift beneath their conversation. This wasn't a rich man's charity project. This was something else. Something neither of them seemed to understand. She typed carefully. Solène, are you always this cryptic, or is it just for me? Voss, I'm out of practice talking to people who aren't trying to get something from me. Solène, well, I'm out of practice talking to people who actually have something to give. So I guess we're both bad at this. A pause. Then, Voss, fair enough. Solène smiled despite herself. It was small, fleeting, but real. She looked down at Remy, who was trying to fit her whole fist in her mouth, and felt something loosen in her chest. Solène, thank you. I should have said it before. But thank you. Voss, you're welcome. Solène, I'll pay you back. I don't know how or when, but I will. Voss, don't. Solène, I have to. Voss, why? Solène, because I don't want to owe you. Voss, you don't owe me anything. That's not how this works. Solène, then how does it work? Voss, I don't know. I'm figuring it out as I go. Solène read the message 3 times. There was something vulnerable in it, something unguarded. It reminded her that on the other end of these messages was a person. Not a concept, not a villain or a savior, but someone as uncertain as she was. Solène, okay. We'll both figure it out then. Voss deal. She set the phone down and exhaled slowly. Remy had fallen asleep in her lap, the stuffed rabbit clutched to her chest. Solène looked around the apartment, still shabby, still cramped, but no longer suffocating. The shadows felt less heavy, the silence less accusing. She still didn't understand Voss. Didn't trust him, not entirely. But for the first time since that night, she felt something other than shame. She felt curious. And maybe, just maybe, that was enough. In his penthouse, Tiernan stared at his phone long after the conversation ended. He'd broken his own rule, don't engage. He'd sent the money precisely because he didn't want connection, didn't want gratitude or obligation. He'd wanted the clean simplicity of a transaction. Help given, no strings attached, case closed. But she hadn't let it be simple. And now he was sitting in his pristine living room, surrounded by silence and expensive furniture, thinking about a woman he'd never met, wondering what she looked like, what her voice sounded like, whether she smiled often or if survival had stolen that from her. He thought about her message. I'm out of practice talking to people who actually have something to give. The honesty of it had gutted him. Marlowe had called earlier, asking about the Helix deal. Tiernan had barely listened. His mind kept drifting back to the message thread, to the strange, stilted conversation that felt more real than anything he'd experienced in years. He picked up Idris's photo again. I think I just made things more complicated, he said quietly. The photo offered no judgment. Just Idris, frozen at 17, forever young, forever laughing. Tiernan set it down and walked to the window. Somewhere out there in the Southbank, Solène was living her life. Feeding her daughter, folding laundry, existing in a world he could only glimpse through cracked smartphone screens and accidental transactions. He should let it go. Let her go. But he knew, with a certainty that felt like falling, that he wouldn't. The message came on a Tuesday morning, while Solène was trying to coax Remy into eating oatmeal instead of wearing it. Voss, I have a question. Solène wiped a glob of oatmeal from Remy's cheek and picked up her phone, frowning. Solène, okay? Voss, would you meet me? In person. Her heart stuttered. She stared at the message, then at Remy, then back at the phone. Of all the things she'd expected him to say, this wasn't one of them. Solène, why? Voss, because I'd like to know who I gave $10,000 to. Solène, you gave it to a stranger. That's all you need to know. Voss, maybe. But I'd still like to meet you. Solène's mind raced. Every instinct screamed danger. Stranger danger, the kind they taught children in school. You didn't meet people from the internet. You didn't trust men who sent money with no explanation. You didn't put yourself in situations you couldn't control. But another part of her, the part that had been invisible for so long, that had begged and scraped and apologized for existing, that part wanted to see him, wanted to look into the eyes of the person who'd seen her $7.52 and decided she mattered. Solène, I don't think that's a good idea. Voss, public place. Your choice. You can leave anytime. Solène, why does this matter to you? Voss, I don't know. It just does. She read the message 3 times, searching for red flags. But all she found was the same strange honesty that had threaded through all their conversations. Unpolished, uncertain, real. Solène, I have a daughter. She goes everywhere with me. Voss, that's fine. Solène, and I'm not looking for whatever you think this is. Voss, neither am I. I just want to meet you. One conversation. That's all. Solène looked at Remy, who had abandoned the oatmeal and was now trying to climb out of her high chair. Her daughter's face was sticky, her curls wild, her eyes bright with the fearless curiosity of someone who didn't yet know the world could hurt you. What kind of example was she setting? Hide from everything? Trust no one? Live small and scared forever? She typed before she could change her mind. Solène, there's a cafe on Brennan Street. Lila's. Tomorrow at 2 p.m. I'll be there for 30 minutes. If you're late, I'm gone. Voss, I'll be there. Solène set the phone down, her hands trembling. What had she just agreed to? The next day, Solène stood outside Lila's cafe at 1:55 p.m. Remy balanced on her hip, and tried to convince herself she could still walk away. The cafe was a small, worn place tucked between a laundromat and a check-cashing store. Its windows were fogged with steam, and through them she could see mismatched tables and chairs, the kind of place where nobody asked questions and the coffee was strong and cheap. It was neutral ground. Safe, or as safe as anything could be. Remy tugged at her collar. "Mama, go in?" "In a minute, baby." Solène scanned the street looking for what? She didn't even know what Voss looked like. Didn't know if he'd be young or old, kind-faced or cruel. She'd imagined a dozen versions. A tech bro in a hoodie, a silver-haired executive, someone cold and calculating with eyes that saw her as a tax write-off. At exactly 2 p.m., a black car pulled up to the curb. Not a limousine, but something sleek and expensive, the kind that didn't belong in the Southbank. The driver's door opened, and a man stepped out. Solène's breath caught. He was tall, 6'2" maybe, with dark hair touched with silver at the temples. He wore a charcoal coat over a simple black sweater and jeans, an attempt at casual that couldn't quite hide the quality of the fabric, the precision of the fit. But it was his face that stopped her. Angular and sharp, with pale gray eyes that swept the street before landing on her. And in that moment she knew. She didn't know how, but she knew. He walked toward her, his stride measured, and stopped a few feet away. Up close, she could see the lines at the corners of his eyes, the tension in his jaw. He looked like a man who smiled rarely and slept less. "Solène." His voice was low, careful. She nodded, unable to speak. His gaze dropped to Remy, and something shifted in his expression, something that looked almost like pain. "And this is?" "Remy, my daughter." Solène's voice came out stronger than she felt. "If this is weird for you." "It's not." He said it quickly, firmly. Then softer. "She's beautiful." Remy, fearless as ever, reached out toward him. "Hi." Tiernan hesitated, then smiled, a small, unpracticed thing that transformed his face. "Hi." Solène pulled Remy back slightly. "Should we?" "Yes. Inside." He gestured toward the cafe, then caught himself. "After you." The cafe smelled like burnt coffee and cinnamon rolls. They sat at a table in the back corner, away from the window. Solène settled Remy on her lap, while Tiernan sat across from them, looking profoundly out of place among the chipped mugs and laminate tables. He'd ordered coffee, black, and Solène had gotten hot chocolate for Remy and tea for herself that she couldn't afford to drink because her hands were shaking too badly to hold the cup. For a long moment, neither of them spoke. Tiernan's eyes kept drifting to Remy, who was completely absorbed in the packet of crackers the waitress had brought. Finally, he said, "Thank you for coming." "I almost didn't." Solène's voice was quiet but steady. "I know." "So?" She met his gaze, refusing to look away. "Here I am. The charity case. In the flesh." "Don't." The word came sharp, almost harsh. He stopped, visibly collecting himself. "That's not why I wanted to meet you." "Then why?" Tiernan's fingers tightened around his coffee cup. "Because I needed to know you were real." The honesty of it caught her off guard. "What does that mean?" "It means," he paused, choosing his words carefully, "I spend my life around people who want things from me. Money, access, favors. Every conversation is a transaction. Every relationship is strategic." He looked up, and his eyes were raw. "But you didn't want anything from me. You tried to give the money back. And I couldn't stop thinking about that. About you." Solène's heart was hammering. "You don't know anything about me. I know you have $7.52, and you tried to give it away to help someone else. I know you're raising a daughter alone. I know you're proud and stubborn, and you'd rather starve than accept help." He leaned forward slightly. "Am I wrong?" "No," she admitted, her voice barely above a whisper. "Then I know enough." Remy chose that moment to drop her crackers, and they both moved to pick them up, their hands nearly colliding on the table. Tiernan pulled back quickly, as if he'd been burned. "Sorry," he muttered. Solène retrieved the crackers and handed them back to Remy. "You said on the phone you don't want anything from me. But everyone wants something." "You're right." Tiernan's jaw tightened. "I want to know that the money mattered. That it changed something. That it wasn't just nothing." "It changed everything," Solène said, and her voice cracked despite her best efforts. "Remy has food." We have a place to sleep. I'm not. She stopped, swallowing hard. I'm not drowning anymore. Because of you. Something flickered across his face, relief, pain, she couldn't tell. Good. That's good. But I still don't understand you. She searched his face. Why does it matter so much? You could do this every day. Send money to 100 people. Why me? Tiernan was silent for a long time. When he finally spoke, his voice was rough. I had a brother, Idris. He was younger than me by 8 years. And when we were kids, we had nothing. Less than nothing. I stole food so he could eat. I lied to social workers so they wouldn't split us up. He stared into his coffee. And people saw us. They saw how desperate we were. And they looked away. Every single one of them. Solene's throat tightened. Idris died 6 years ago, Tiernan continued. And I've spent every day since then wondering what would have happened if just one person had stopped, had seen us, had decided we mattered. He looked up, and his eyes were bright with unshed tears. So when I saw your balance, $7.52, I saw us. And I couldn't look away. Not again. The air between them felt fragile, charged. Solène didn't know what to say. What could she possibly say to that? Remy, oblivious to the weight of the moment, reached across the table toward Tiernan's watch, a simple piece, elegant and expensive. He froze. Remy, no. Solène started to pull her back. It's okay. Tiernan's voice was soft. He unfastened the watch and held it out, letting Remy's tiny fingers close around it. She giggled, delighted, turning it over in her hands. She'll drool on it, Solène warned. I don't care. And watching him, this severe, controlled man letting her daughter gum his watch with complete patience, Solène felt something crack open in her chest. I'm sorry about your brother, she said quietly. Tiernan's eyes met hers. I'm sorry you've had to fight so hard. They sat like that, the words hanging between them, while Remy babbled happily, and the cafe hummed with the white noise of other people's lives. And for the first time since this all began, Solène didn't feel like a recipient of charity. She felt seen. When 30 minutes passed, neither of them moved to leave. They talked, carefully at first, then with increasing ease. Tiernan asked about Remy, and Solène found herself telling him things she hadn't told anyone. How Remy's father had left before she was born, how she dropped out of her biochemistry program 3 credits short of graduating, how some nights she sang Remy to sleep and cried when her daughter couldn't hear. Tiernan listened like it mattered, like she mattered, and in turn he told her fragments of his life. The empire he'd built from nothing, the isolation that came with it, the way he'd turned himself into something untouchable because it hurt less than being vulnerable. I don't know how to do this, he admitted at one point, gesturing vaguely between them. Talk to someone without an agenda. Me neither, Solène said. But I think we're doing okay. When they finally left the cafe, the sun was setting, painting the Southbank in shades of amber and shadow. Tiernan walked them to the bus stop, Remy now dozing against Solène's shoulder. Can I see you again? He asked. Solène hesitated. This was the moment to end it, to thank him and walk away and return to her life. The smart thing, the safe thing. But she thought about his eyes when he'd talked about his brother, about the way he'd let Remy drool on his watch, about the fact that he'd looked at her $7.52 and decided she was worth saving. Yeah, she said. I'd like that. The smile that crossed his face was small but genuine. Thursday. Same place. Thursday. As the bus pulled up, Tiernan reached out, then stopped himself. Thank you for trusting me enough to come. Thank you for seeing me, Solène replied. And as the bus carried her and Remy away, she looked back to see him standing on the corner, hands in his pockets, watching them go. For the first time in years, Solène felt something she'd almost forgotten. She felt hope. Thursday came, and with it rain. Not the punishing downpour of that first night, but a steady drizzle that turned the Southbank's cracked sidewalks into mirrors reflecting gray sky. Solène arrived at Lila's 10 minutes early, Remy bundled in a jacket that was already too small, and found Tiernan waiting outside. He stood beneath the cafe's striped awning, rain misting his dark coat, and something about the sight of him, this man who lived 42 floors above the world, waiting for her in the rain, made her chest tighten. You're early, she said as she approached. So are you. His eyes swept over her, then Remy, with an expression she was learning to recognize. Concern carefully restrained. You're soaked. It's just rain. It's 50 degrees. Solène felt a flicker of irritation. I know what temperature it is. Tiernan caught himself, jaw tightening. I didn't mean, he stopped, exhaled. I'm not good at this. At what? Caring about someone without trying to fix everything. The words hung between them, raw and unguarded. Solène's irritation dissolved. Come on. Let's get inside before Remy turns into a popsicle. Inside, they claimed the same corner table. Remy was more energetic today, squirming in Solène's lap, reaching for everything within grabbing distance. Tiernan ordered coffee again and, without asking, a hot chocolate and a grilled cheese for Remy. When Solène opened her mouth to protest, he cut her off. Please, let me. She nodded, swallowing her pride. When the food came, Remy attacked it with the singular focus only a toddler could muster. Tiernan watched her with something like wonder. Does she always eat like she's in a competition? Solène smiled despite herself. When the food's good, yeah. When was the last time it was good? The question was gentle, but it landed like a blow. Solène looked down at her tea. Before you sent the money? Months. Maybe longer. Tiernan's expression darkened. And her father? Gone. He left when I told him I was pregnant. She said it flatly, a fact recited so many times it had lost its sting. Almost. Said he wasn't ready to be a father. As if I was ready to be a mother at 28 with half a degree and no job. He's an idiot. Solène looked up, startled by the venom in Tiernan's voice. Anyone who walks away from that, he gestured toward Remy, who was now trying to share her grilled cheese with the table, is worse than an idiot. He's a coward. Something in Solène's throat tightened. She'd heard plenty of platitudes over the years. You're better off without him, his loss, you're so strong. But no one had ever said it with the quiet fury Tiernan carried. Like her abandonment had personally offended him. What about you? She asked, deflecting. Anyone waiting for you in that tower of yours? No. The answer was immediate, definitive. Never. Tiernan's fingers traced the rim of his coffee cup. Once. A long time ago. It didn't work. Why not? Because I was more interested in building an empire than building a life. He looked up, his gray eyes startling in their honesty. She was right to leave. Do you regret it? He considered the question. I regret who I had to become to survive. But I don't know if I regret the choices. They kept me alive. Solène understood that. God, did she understand that? Your brother, she said carefully. Idris. You said he died 6 years ago. What happened? Tiernan went very still. For a moment, she thought he wouldn't answer. Then, he was 27, working as a paramedic. He loved it, loved helping people, being the one who showed up when everything was falling apart. His voice was steady, but his knuckles were white around the cup. He was responding to a car accident. Drunk driver, head-on collision. And while he was treating the victims, another car lost control. Hydroplaned in the rain. Solène's stomach dropped. Tiernan. It hit him. Killed him instantly. The words were clinical, detached. I was in Tokyo closing a deal. Didn't even know until I landed 12 hours later. I'm so sorry. I had money by then. Enough to make sure he never had to worry about anything. But he wouldn't take it. Said he didn't want to be another thing I controlled. Tiernan's laugh was bitter. He died in the rain, helping strangers, because he had to prove he didn't need me. Solène reached across the table without thinking, her hand covering his. That's not why he died. He died because he was good. Because he cared. That's not your fault. Tiernan stared at their hands, her brown fingers over his pale ones, like he'd forgotten what touch felt like. I should have been there. You couldn't have known. I should have made time. Should have. His voice cracked. He was the only person who knew me before I became this. And I let work matter more than him. I chose deals over dinners. Conference calls over conversations. And now he's gone. The grief in his voice was so raw it hurt to hear. Remy, sensing the shift in mood, abandoned her food and reached for Tiernan. Sad. He looked at her, this tiny human with cheese on her face and eyes too perceptive for her age. Yes, sweetheart. A little sad. Hug. Tiernan glanced at Solène, asking permission. She nodded, her own eyes burning. Remy launched herself across the table, and Tiernan caught her reflexively, pulling her against his chest. She wrapped her small arms around his neck and patted his back the way Solène did when she was upset. "Sokai," Remy murmured. "Sokai." And Tiernan, billionaire, empire builder, man of steel and silence, closed his eyes and held her daughter like she was the only thing keeping him anchored to the world. Solène watched, her heart breaking and mending simultaneously. She thought about her own losses. The father who'd died when she was 12, the mother who'd followed 2 years later, the ex who'd abandoned her, the life she'd planned that had dissolved like sugar in rain. She thought about how survival required you to bury your grief, so deep you forgot it was there, until someone reminded you it was okay to feel it. When Remy finally pulled back, she patted Tiernan's cheek. "Better." He smiled, a real smile, soft and grateful. "Better. Thank you." Remy returned to her grilled cheese, like nothing monumental had happened. But everything had shifted. Tiernan looked at Solène, vulnerability written across every line of his face. "I don't know what I'm doing here." "Me neither," she admitted. "But I don't want to stop." "Neither do I." The rain continued outside, and the cafe hummed around them, and 2 broken people sat across from each other, beginning to understand that maybe, just maybe, broken pieces could still fit together. When they left, Tiernan walked them to the bus stop again. This time, as the bus approached, he said, "Can I give you my number? My real number, not just the app." Solène hesitated, then handed him her phone. He typed quickly and handed it back. She glanced at the screen. Tiernan Voss. Not T. Voss. His full name. A real offering. "Call me," he said. "Anytime. Even if it's just to talk." "Okay." As she boarded the bus with Remy, Tiernan called out, "Solène?" She turned. "Thank you for letting me tell you about him." She nodded, unable to speak past the lump in her throat. The bus pulled away, and through the rain-streaked window, she watched him stand there until they rounded the corner, and he disappeared. That night, after Remy was asleep, Solène saved his number and stared at it for a long time. Then she typed, "Solène, thank you for trusting me with your story." The response came immediately. "Tiernan, thank you for listening." And in the silence of her small apartment, Solène smiled. Over the next 2 weeks, something unexpected happened. They became friends. It started with text messages, small things, inconsequential. Tiernan sent a photo of sunrise from his penthouse with the caption, "Does the sun look different from up here, or am I just disconnected from reality?" Solène replied with a picture of Remy covered head to toe in spaghetti sauce. "Reality looks like this." His response, "I think I prefer your version." The messages came at odd hours. Tiernan texted at 3 in the morning when insomnia held him hostage. Solène responded at 5 when Remy's early wake-ups made sleep impossible. They talked about everything and nothing. Books neither had time to read, childhood memories that still ached, the weight of responsibility neither had asked for but couldn't put down. They met at Lila's 3 more times. Then 4. Then Tiernan suggested something different. "Tiernan, there's a park near the Vandore District. Grayson Park. It has a playground. Would Remy like that?" Solène stared at the message. The Vandore District was his world. Glass towers and boutique coffee shops where a latte cost more than her weekly grocery budget. Taking Remy there felt like crossing an invisible border. But she thought about the playground equipment at the Southbank Park, rusted, half-broken, surrounded by chain-link fence. She thought about Remy's face when she saw other children playing on equipment that actually worked. Solène, Saturday. 10 a.m. Grayson Park was nothing like the Southbank. Trees lined manicured paths. The playground equipment gleamed, brightly colored and safe. Mothers in expensive athleisure pushed designer strollers while their children shrieked with laughter. Solène felt immediately out of place in her thrift store jeans and worn jacket, but Remy's gasp of wonder made every stare worth it. "Mama, slide." Remy pointed, bouncing in Solène's arms. "I see it, baby. You want to go?" "Yes, yes, yes." Tiernan appeared beside them, dressed down in dark jeans and a gray Henley that probably cost more than her rent. But his smile when he saw Remy was genuine, unguarded. "Ready to conquer the slide?" he asked. Remy reached for him without hesitation, a gesture that still surprised Solène. Her daughter, who'd known only absence and disappointment from men, had decided Tiernan was safe. Children knew things adults had forgotten. Tiernan carried Remy to the playground, and Solène followed, watching as he helped her daughter climb the ladder, his large hands steadying her small ones. When Remy reached the top, she squealed with delight. "Mama, look. I'm high. I see you, baby. Be careful." Remy slid down, laughing the whole way, and Tiernan caught her at the bottom. Again. Again. They repeated the process 6 times before Remy noticed the swings. Tiernan pushed her gently, his movements careful, controlled. Solène sat on the bench nearby, watching them, and felt something dangerous bloom in her chest. This could be a life, she thought. This could be what normal feels like. The thought terrified her. After the playground, they walked to a small cafe. Not Lila's, but something quieter, with outdoor seating. Remy was exhausted, dozing in her stroller with chocolate milk staining her shirt. Solène and Tiernan sat across from each other, coffee cooling between them. "She's incredible," Tiernan said, watching Remy sleep. "You're raising someone extraordinary." Solène's throat tightened. "I'm trying. Some days I'm not sure I'm enough." "You are." He said it with such certainty that she almost believed him. "How do you know?" "Because she laughs like she's never known anything but love. That doesn't happen by accident." Solène looked down at her coffee. "My mom used to say that. That love was the only thing that mattered. She died believing it." She paused. "I'm not sure she was right. What do you think matters?" "Survival. Making sure Remy eats. Keeping a roof over our heads. Love doesn't pay rent." Tiernan leaned forward. "But survival isn't living. I have more money than I could spend in 10 lifetimes, and I've been surviving for 6 years. I'm not sure I've been alive since Idris died. Then why keep building? Why keep working? Because it's easier than feeling." He met her eyes. "Until I met you." The words hung between them, heavy with implication. Solène's heart hammered. "Tiernan, I'm not asking for anything," he said quickly. "I just need you to know that these past few weeks, talking to you, spending time with Remy, it's the first time I've felt like a person instead of a machine." Solène didn't know what to say. She reached across the table, her hand covering his. "You saved my life. I think it's only fair I remind you how to live yours." His fingers curled around hers, and they sat like that, hands intertwined, while the world moved around them. That night, Tiernan called instead of texting. Solène was folding laundry when her phone rang. She almost didn't answer. Phone calls felt too intimate, too real, but curiosity won. "Hello. Hi." His voice was softer over the phone, more vulnerable. "Is this a bad time?" "No. Remy's asleep. I'm just doing laundry. Riveting Saturday night." She laughed. "What about you?" "Hot date with a financial report. Actually, I'm on my balcony, looking at the city, and I realized I don't know what your favorite color is." The question was so unexpected she laughed again. "My favorite color? We've talked about loss and survival and broken childhoods. But I don't know the small things. Your favorite color. Your favorite food. What you wanted to be when you were 10. Solène sat down on the couch, phone pressed to her ear. "Blue. Like the ocean, even though I've never seen it. Favorite food is my mom's jollof rice, but I haven't made it in years because I can't get it right. And when I was 10, I wanted to cure cancer. Why biochemistry? Because my dad died of leukemia. I thought if I understood cells, I could stop other kids from losing their parents." She paused. "Turns out life doesn't work that way." "No," Tiernan agreed quietly. "It doesn't. What about you? Favorite color?" "I don't think I have one. Everyone has a favorite color." "Gray then." "It's honest." "That's the saddest answer I've ever heard." He laughed, a real laugh, warm and unexpected. "Okay. Green. Like the park today. Like new things growing. Better. Favorite food? My mother's potato soup. She made it with nothing, just potatoes, water, salt, but it tasted like everything would be okay." They talked for 2 hours. About nothing. About everything. And when they finally said goodnight, Solène lay in bed staring at the ceiling, a smile playing at her lips. She was in trouble. The kind of trouble that felt like falling. And for the first time in years, she didn't want to fight it. When was the last time someone made you feel truly seen? Share your moment in the comments. Let's celebrate those connections together. The photograph appeared on a Monday morning. Solène was making breakfast, scrambled eggs, toast, the simple abundance that still felt like luxury, when her phone began buzzing with notifications. Text messages from numbers she didn't recognize. Facebook messages from people she'd gone to high school with and hadn't spoken to in a decade. She frowned, wiping her hands on a towel, and opened her phone. The first message contained a link in 3 words. "Is this you?" Her stomach dropped before she even clicked it. The article was from Metropolitan Pulse, one of those gossip sites that thrived on scandal and speculation. The headline blazed across her screen in bold letters. Billionaire's new charity project? Tech mogul Tiernan Voss spotted with mysterious single mother. Below it, a photograph. Crystal clear, taken with a telephoto lens. Tiernan pushing Remy on the swings at Grayson Park, Solène standing beside them, laughing at something he'd said. They looked happy. They looked like a family. The article was worse than the headline. Tiernan Voss, the notoriously private CEO of Voss Industries, was spotted this weekend at Grayson Park in the Vandore District with an unidentified woman and her young daughter. Sources close to Voss report this is highly unusual behavior for the reclusive billionaire, who hasn't been photographed with a woman since his brief engagement to socialite Amanda Weston ended in 2019. The mystery woman, identified by locals as Solène Kasra, a single mother from the Southbank district, appears to be Voss's latest philanthropic interest. Voss, known for his substantial charitable donations, has previously funded homeless shelters and food banks throughout Ashmont. Is this relationship genuine, or simply another PR move from a man trying to soften his ruthless corporate image? One anonymous source stated, "Tiernan doesn't do anything without calculating the return on investment. If he's spending time with someone from the Southbank, there's an angle." Solène read it twice, her hands shaking. Then she dropped the phone like it had burned her. Philanthropic interest. Charity project. PR move. The words circled in her mind like vultures. Every insecurity she'd buried, every fear she'd silenced, they all came roaring back with vicious clarity. Of course this was what people would think, what they would say. Poor Solène from the Southbank, so desperate and pathetic that she'd fallen for the first rich man who threw money at her. Tiernan Voss's pet project. His tax write-off with a pulse. Remy tugged at her leg. "Mama, eggs." Solène looked down at her daughter, and something inside her cracked. What had she done? She'd let a stranger into their lives, let Remy get attached, let herself believe. What? That a billionaire actually cared about them? That this was real? She was a fool. And now the whole city knew it. She didn't answer Tiernan's calls. He tried 3 times that morning, then sent messages. "Tiernan, Solène, I just saw the article. I'm so sorry. This is my fault. Tiernan, please call me. Let me explain. Tiernan, I need to know you're okay." She stared at the messages, rage and humiliation warring in her chest. Finally, she typed, "Solène, is that what I am to you? A project?" His response was immediate. "Tiernan, no. God, no. Please let me see you. Solène, so you can what? Tell me this was all real. That you weren't just playing fairy godmother to make yourself feel better about your dead brother?" The moment she sent it, she regretted it. It was cruel, a knife aimed at his softest wound. But she was hurting, and hurt people hurt people. His response took longer. "Tiernan, if that's what you think of me, then I've failed. But you're wrong." "Solène, am I? Because that article says differently. It says you're known for this. For swooping in and playing savior." "Tiernan, I donate to charities. I don't befriend the recipients. There's a difference." "Solène, is there? Because from where I'm standing, it looks the same. You saw someone broken and decided to fix them. Well, congratulations, Tiernan. You made yourself feel good. Now the whole world knows what a saint you are." "Tiernan, that's not fair." "Solène, none of this is fair. Do you know what people are saying? That I'm using you. That I'm a gold digger who got lucky. That I'm probably sleeping with you for money." "Tiernan, who cares what they say?" The question detonated in her chest. "Solène, I care. Because I have to live in this city. I have to take Remy to the park and the store and the clinic, And now everyone is looking at me like I'm something to pity or judge. You get to go back to your tower and your perfect life. I'm stuck down here with the mess you made. The typing indicator appeared, disappeared, appeared again. Finally. Tiernan, you're right. I'm sorry. I should have been more careful. I should have protected you better. And somehow his apology made it worse. Because it confirmed what she feared. She was something that needed protecting. Something fragile and shameful that couldn't exist in his world without causing scandal. Solène, I can't do this. Tiernan, Solène, please. Solène, I need you to leave us alone. No more money. No more meetings. No more pretending this was ever going to work. Tiernan, it's not pretending. What we have is real. Solène, what we have is a mistake. I sent money to the wrong number, and you felt guilty. That's all this ever was. Tiernan, you don't believe that. But she did. Or at least she needed to. Because believing anything else hurt too much. Solène, goodbye, Tiernan. She blocked his number before he could respond. Then she blocked him on the payment app, on social media, everywhere. She erased him as thoroughly as she could, even though she knew it wouldn't erase the ache. That night, Remy asked about him. Where Tiernan? Solène was tucking her into the crib, and the question nearly broke her. He's busy, baby. He come back. I don't think so. Remy's face crumpled. But I like Tiernan. He's nice. I know, sweetheart. I know. Solène held her daughter until she cried herself to sleep, then retreated to the couch and let herself fall apart. She cried for the friendship she'd lost, for the future she'd glimpsed and could never have, for the look on Remy's face when she'd asked about Tiernan. But mostly she cried because a part of her, the part she'd tried so hard to silence, had started to believe she deserved good things. That maybe she was worth more than survival. That maybe someone could look at her and see not a charity case, but a person worth knowing. The article had reminded her of the truth. People like her didn't get fairy tales. They got by. They survived. And sometimes, if they were very lucky, they got 30 minutes of pretending before reality came crashing back. Outside, the city of Ashmont pressed on, indifferent to the small, quiet heartbreak unfolding in a third-floor apartment where a woman sat alone in the dark, grieving something she'd never really had. Tiernan stood in his penthouse, staring at his phone, willing it to light up with a message that wouldn't come. 3 days had passed since Solène blocked him. 72 hours of silence that felt like drowning in slow motion. He'd tried everything. Called from different numbers, she didn't answer. Went to Lila's cafe at their usual time, she never showed. He'd even driven to the Southbank, parked outside her building, but couldn't bring himself to go up. What right did he have to force his way back into her life after he'd exposed her to public humiliation? Marlowe had called it an unfortunate media incident and suggested a strategic donation to a women's shelter for damage control. Tiernan had fired back with words he didn't remember, only that they'd been sharp enough to make his assistant go silent on the other end. He didn't want damage control. He wanted Solène. The realization had hit him on the second day of silence, sitting in his office overlooking the city, pretending to review quarterly reports while his mind replayed every conversation, every laugh, every moment Remy had looked at him like he mattered. He'd fallen in love with them. Both of them. Somewhere between the accidental transaction and the block number. He'd stopped surviving and started living. And now that it was gone, the silence in his penthouse wasn't peaceful. It was suffocating. Idris's photo sat on his desk, face up now. Tiernan picked it up, studying his brother's frozen smile. I messed up, he said to the image. I finally found something real, and I destroyed it by not thinking, by not protecting her. The photo offered no answers, but he could almost hear Idris's voice. So fix it, you idiot. How? Tiernan asked the empty room. She won't talk to me. Won't see me. I can't force her. Then show her she's wrong about you. Tiernan set the photo down, his jaw tightening with resolve. Solène thought he'd been playing savior, that she was just another charitable tax deduction. He needed to prove that wrong. Not with words, but with action. He picked up his phone and made a call. Marlowe, I need you to do something, and I need it done quietly. Solène was running out of ways to keep herself busy. She'd deep cleaned the apartment twice, reorganized cabinets that didn't need organizing, played with Remy until they were both exhausted. Anything to stop thinking about Tiernan's last message, the one she'd seen before blocking him. What we have is real. For words that haunted her at 3 a.m. when sleep wouldn't come. For words that made her question everything. What if he'd meant it? What if she'd thrown away something genuine because she was too scared, too damaged, too convinced she didn't deserve good things? But then she'd remember the article. The comments she'd seen before deleting social media. Gold digger alert. She hit the jackpot with that typo. Poor guy probably feels obligated to help her. The words had confirmed every fear she'd ever had about herself. That she was too broken, too poor, too much of a burden for anyone to actually want. Remy had stopped asking about Tiernan after the first day, but Solène caught her daughter looking toward the door sometimes, as if expecting him to walk through. The hope in those small glances was a knife to her chest. On the 4th day, there was a knock at her door. Solène froze, heart hammering. She approached slowly, Remy on her hip, and peered through the peephole. A woman in a business suit stood in the hallway, holding a folder. Not Tiernan. Solène opened the door a crack. Can I help you? Solène Kasra? The woman's smile was professional but warm. Yes. My name is Dr. Patricia Chen. I'm the dean of the biochemistry department at Ashmont University. She held up the folder. Do you have a few minutes? I'd like to discuss something with you. 20 minutes later, Solène sat on her couch in stunned silence. Dr. Chen had spread papers across the coffee table, scholarship applications, course catalogs, financial aid forms. All pre-filled with Solène's information. I don't understand, Solène said for the 3rd time. Why are you here? Because we received an anonymous endowment specifically designated for single mothers returning to complete their degrees in STEM fields. Dr. Chen's eyes were kind. Your name was submitted by someone who believes in your potential. Your transcripts are excellent, Ms. Kasra. 3 credits shy of graduation with a 3.8 GPA. That's remarkable, especially given your circumstances. Who submitted my name? The donor requested anonymity, but they were very insistent that you be given every opportunity to finish what you started. She pushed a paper forward. This scholarship would cover tuition, books, and provide a living stipend. There's also subsidized childcare on campus. You could complete your degree in 1 semester. Graduate in May. Solène's hands trembled. This is too much. I can't accept. Why not? Because I don't deserve it. Dr. Chen leaned forward. Ms. Kasra, I've been in academia for 30 years. I've seen countless brilliant minds give up because life got hard. You didn't give up. You paused. There's a difference. She tapped the scholarship papers. Someone sees that. Someone believes you deserve a second chance. The question is, do you believe it? After Dr. Chen left, Solène sat holding the papers, tears streaming down her face. She knew who the anonymous donor was. Knew it with the same certainty she'd known him in the cafe that first day. Tiernan hadn't tried to force his way back into her life. Hadn't made it about him. He'd simply seen what she needed and made it possible. Not as charity. As belief. I'm not your charity case, she'd thrown at him. I know what $7.52 means, he'd responded. He'd always seen her. Not as a project or a tax write-off, but as someone with dreams worth investing in. She picked up her phone, stared at his blocked number, and made a choice. That evening, Tiernan's doorbell rang. He wasn't expecting anyone. Marlowe had strict instructions not to disturb him, and he'd ignored 17 business calls. He considered not answering, but something made him walk to the door. He opened it. Solène stood in his hallway, wearing the same thrift store jacket from the park, Remy asleep against her shoulder. Her eyes were red-rimmed, her face bare of makeup. She'd never looked more beautiful. Hi, she whispered. Tiernan's throat closed. Hi, can we talk? He stepped aside wordlessly, and she entered his penthouse for the first time. Her eyes swept the space. The minimalist furniture, the floor-to-ceiling windows, the cold perfection of it all. And he suddenly saw it through her eyes. A mausoleum. A monument to isolation. She turned to face him, adjusting Remy carefully. The dean of the biochemistry department came to see me today. Did she? It wasn't a question. She offered me a full scholarship. Childcare. A A stipend. Everything I need to finish my degree. That's good. Tiernan. Her voice cracked. Why? He shoved his hands in his pockets to keep from reaching for her. Because you deserve to finish what you started. Because Remy deserves to see her mother achieve her dreams. Because you're brilliant, and the world needs more people like you in science. I was horrible to you. You were scared. And I gave you reason to be. He took a step closer. That article, the invasion of privacy, that was my fault. I should have been more careful. Should have protected you better. No. She shook her head. I should have trusted you. Trusted what we had. But I've spent so long believing I don't deserve good things that when something good finally happened, I sabotaged it. Solène. I'm terrified, she interrupted, her voice breaking. I'm terrified that if I let myself love you, you'll realize I'm not worth it. That you'll wake up one day and see what everyone else sees. A broke single mother with nothing to offer. Tiernan closed the distance between them in 3 strides. He cupped her face gently, careful not to wake Remy. You want to know what I see? She nodded, tears spilling over. I see someone who gave away her last $100 to help family. Who waters down formula so her daughter can eat. Who walks in the rain because she can't afford the bus. Who still dreams even when the world tells her not to. His thumb brushed away her tears. I see the strongest person I've ever met. And I see someone I don't want to live without. I don't have anything to give you, she whispered. You already gave me everything. You reminded me how to feel. How to live. How to be human instead of a machine. He pressed his forehead to hers. I love you, Solène. And I love Remy. Not because I want to save you, but because you saved me. She sobbed, one hand clutching his shirt while the other supported Remy. I love you too. God help me, I do. Then come back. Give us a real chance. Let me prove that this isn't charity or obligation. Let me show you what love actually looks like. I'm scared. So am I. But I'd rather be scared with you than alone without you. She kissed him then, soft and salt-sweet and trembling with everything they'd been holding back. When they pulled apart, Remy stirred, lifting her head groggily. She saw Tiernan and broke into a sleepy smile. Tieman. He laughed, the sound wet with emotion. Hey, sweetheart. You come back. Yeah. He looked at Solène, hope and love and promise in his eyes. I came back. 6 months later. The rain had returned to Ashmont, but this time it felt different. Not like punishment, but cleansing. Washing away the grime of winter to make room for something new. Solène stood at the window of Tiernan's penthouse. Their penthouse now, though she still had moments where the reality of that felt impossible. Watching the city shimmer beneath the storm. Behind her, Remy's laughter echoed through the space that had once been a mausoleum and was now, finally, a home. Mama. Tieman make funny face. Solène turned to find Tiernan on his hands and knees. Remy riding on his back like he was a horse, his expression one of exaggerated exhaustion. He'd traded his tailored suits for jeans and a worn sweater on weekends, and the transformation still took her breath away. Not the clothes, but the lightness in his eyes. The way he smiled now, easily, often, like he'd remembered how. Should I rescue him? Solène asked, grinning. Please, Tiernan gasped dramatically. She's a tyrant. Send help. Remy giggled, bouncing. Again. I created a monster, he muttered, but he was smiling as he crawled another lap around the living room. Solène watched them, her chest tight with a feeling she'd finally learned to name, joy. Not the desperate, clinging kind that feared its own disappearance, but the steady, rooted kind that came from truly believing you deserved it. The past 6 months had been a study in transformation. She'd enrolled in her final semester at Ashmont University, walking onto campus with Remy in tow and fear in her throat. But Dr. Chin had been right. The scholarship covered everything. More than that, it had given her back something she'd thought was lost forever. Her dreams. She'd thrown herself into her studies with the hunger of someone making up for lost time. Biochemistry labs, research papers, late nights reviewing molecular structures while Tiernan made sure Remy was fed and bathed and read stories in voices that made her daughter shriek with laughter. He'd insisted she move in after the first month. Not because she needed to, but because he couldn't stand the nights without them. The penthouse had slowly transformed. Toys in the corner, Remy's artwork on the refrigerator, photographs on the walls. Idris's photo now sat beside newer ones. Solène in her lab coat, Remy's third birthday party, the three of them at Grayson Park. The media had eventually lost interest when there was no scandal to feed on, just a quiet family building a life together. Tiernan had learned to ignore the whispers, and Solène had learned that other people's opinions couldn't diminish what they'd built. "Okay, Miss Remy," Tiernan said, carefully dismounting her and catching his breath. "Uncle Tiernan needs a break before his back gives out." "Not uncle," Remy corrected seriously, as she did every time. "Just Tieman." Something flickered across his face. Want and hope and fear all tangled together. He'd been careful never to push, never to try to replace the father who'd abandoned them. But Solène saw how he looked at Remy, how he loved her with the fierce protectiveness of someone who'd lost everything once and refused to lose it again. Remy toddled over to Solène, wrapping her arms around her mother's legs. "Mama graduate soon? 2 more weeks, baby. Then you be a scientist?" "Then I'll be a scientist. Like the ones on TV who make sick people better?" Solène crouched down, brushing Remy's curls from her face. "Exactly like that." Tiernan had offered to fund her education outright a dozen times. Each time she'd refused. The scholarship was hers, earned, not given. But she'd accepted other things. His love, his partnership, his presence at every milestone. He'd been there when she'd aced her organic chemistry final, when she'd presented her research proposal, when she'd broken down crying over a failed experiment, and he'd held her until the storm passed. "I'm proud of you," he said now, coming to stand beside them. "In case I haven't mentioned it in the last hour." Solène stood, looping her arms around his neck. "You might have mentioned it once or twice." He kissed her softly, then pulled back with a seriousness that made her heart skip. "I need to tell you something." Her stomach tightened. "Okay, Remy, sweetheart, can you go play with your blocks for a minute? Grown-up talk." "Boring," Remy announced, but she skipped off to her corner of toys. Tiernan took both of Solène's hands, and she realized his were trembling slightly. "What's wrong?" "Nothing's wrong. Everything's." He exhaled. "I've been thinking about something, and I need to ask you before I lose my nerve." "You're scaring me." "Don't be scared." He squeezed her hands. 6 months ago, you sent $100 to the wrong number. Best mistake of my life." Despite her nerves, she smiled. "Mine too. You walked into that cafe ready to bolt at any second. And somehow you trusted me enough to stay. Trusted me with your story, with your daughter, with your heart." His voice roughened. "You made me remember what it felt like to be human. You took this," he gestured around the penthouse, "and turned it into a home. You and Remy, you're everything I didn't know I needed." Tears were already forming in her eyes. "Tiernan, let me finish." He released one of her hands and reached into his pocket, pulling out a small velvet box. Solène's breath caught. "I know it's fast," he continued, his gray eyes intense. "And I know you value your independence. I'm not trying to rescue you or complete you or any of that fairy tale nonsense. You're already complete. You're already strong. But I want to be your partner. Your equal. Your family." He opened the box, revealing a simple platinum band with a single emerald green, like new things growing. "Solène Kasra, will you marry me?" The tears spilled over. She looked at the ring, at this man who'd seen her at her lowest and decided she was worth fighting for, at the life they'd built from a mistake and turned into something real. "Yes," she whispered. Then louder, laughing through tears. "Yes. God, yes." He slid the ring onto her finger with shaking hands, then pulled her into a kiss that felt like coming home. Behind them, Remy's voice rang out. "Mama happy?" They broke apart, both laughing. Solène turned to her daughter. "Yes, baby. Mama's very happy." Remy considered this, then looked at Tiernan with her 2 wise eyes. "You stay forever now?" Tiernan crouched down to her level. "If that's okay with you, yeah. I stay forever." "Okay." Remy patted his cheek with sticky hands. "I like you. I like you too, sweetheart." She threw her arms around his neck, and he held her close, his eyes meeting Solène's over their daughter's head. In that look was everything they'd survived and everything they'd become. Broken people who'd found each other in the wreckage and built something beautiful. 2 weeks later, Solène walked across the stage at her graduation. The auditorium was packed, but she only saw two faces in the crowd. Tiernan, holding Remy on his shoulders so she could see, both of them cheering louder than anyone else. When they called her name, Solène Casra, Bachelor of Science in Biochemistry, summa cum laude, the applause was thunderous. But the sound that mattered most was Remy's squealed, "Mama," and Tiernan's whispered, "That's my girl." She accepted her diploma, the weight of it both literal and symbolic. This piece of paper represented every night she'd studied while Remy slept, every formula she'd memorized, every obstacle she'd overcome. But more than that, it represented hope reclaimed, dreams resurrected, a woman who'd refused to stay broken. After the ceremony, they took photos on the university lawn. Tiernan held the diploma while Solène held Remy, all three of them laughing as spring rain began to fall. Soft and warm, nothing like that first desperate night. "We should go," Tiernan said, wiping rain from his face, "before we get soaked." But Solène tilted her face to the sky, letting the water wash over her. "Wait, just for a minute." He understood. He always did. They stood there together, Solène, Tiernan, and Remy, letting the rain baptize them into this new life. "I have something for you," Tiernan said, pulling an envelope from his jacket. Solène took it, frowning. Inside was a check made out to her cousin Cass for $100, and a note in Tiernan's handwriting. For the woman this was meant for. "Tell her thank you for having the wrong number." Solène laughed, the sound bright and free. "You're impossible." "I'm yours," he corrected. She kissed him there in the rain, tasting joy and promise and the future they'd build together. That night, after Remy was asleep, they sat on the balcony watching the city lights. "Do you ever think about that night?" Solène asked. "When I sent you the money?" "Every day." "Do you regret it?" "Sending it back." Tiernan turned to look at her, his expression tender. "That $10,000 was the best investment I ever made. Not because of what it bought, but because of where it led me. To you. I still plan to pay you back, you know." "Solène, not the money." She laced her fingers through his. "But everything you've given me, the belief, the support, the love, I'm going to spend the rest of my life paying that back. Not because I owe you, but because I want to. Because you deserve someone who sees you as clearly as you see me. You already do. Good. Because you're stuck with me now." "Best mistake I ever made," he murmured, echoing that first night. They sat in comfortable silence, two people who'd been lost and found each other in the chaos. Below them, Ashmont sprawled in all its messy, beautiful glory. A city of wrong numbers and second chances, of rain that washed clean and hope that refused to die. Somewhere in the Southbank, someone was probably struggling the way Solène once had. Somewhere in the Vandore District, someone was probably isolating themselves the way Tiernan once had. But here, on this balcony, two worlds had collided and created something neither could have imagined alone. Not a fairy tale. Not a rescue. Just two broken people who'd chosen to be brave, to be vulnerable, to believe that love, real, messy, complicated love, was worth the risk. And as the city breathed around them and rain whispered promises against the glass, Solène realized something. She'd sent $100 to the wrong number, and in return, she'd received everything right. Sometimes our biggest mistakes lead to our greatest blessings. Has a wrong turn in your life ever led you to exactly where you needed to be? Share your story below. I'd love to hear how unexpected moments changed your path. And if this story touched your heart, subscribe for more emotional journeys. Your support means the world. Red Heart.